Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
And I'm your host today, Chris Santomassimo from OGC Solutions. And I'd like to introduce you to some new friends of the podcast. On today are Mike Seagram, who's the president, and Mark Witkowski, who is the chief technology officer from Publishers Storage and Shipping in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, how you doing, Chris?
So I think what you guys are doing for the publishing world in terms of distribution and fulfillment is interesting about how you're taking this sort of traditional business and really overlaying it nicely with technology, which we're going to talk about. But I think what's kind of also interesting just about the industry in which you play, as this sort of hub of fulfillment that PSSC is, you really can talk about some of what we're seeing or what the business is seeing in the publishing and the printing world when it comes to books, and some of the shifts that we're seeing. So I'd love to hear not only about PSSC but also what you're seeing in the marketplace. So take it away.
Yeah, great. Well, it is evolving for sure. And Mark and I actually came from the production side of the business. We acquired the company in 2015. But as we've been away from the production side of the business, but there's been so many changes that we've seen in that area. Certainly a lot of consolidation, and technology is playing a huge role in how that whole side of the business is evolving as well, right? So making it very cost efficient for publishers to print short run now with the digital print engines, and it's just changing the whole way that the world is thinking about book production, being able to come out with shorter first runs, how backlists are managed, and right down to one-offs. The print on demand aspect has really helped from a production management and an inventory management point of view. So it's been pretty dramatic how all of that has changed. We see the world, every transaction as a fulfillment transaction. We don't really care whether we're picking the book off of a shelf or we're going to integrate with a printer and send a book order to someone for a short run or for more likely a print on demand. And so in that regard, we continue to see the world that way. It's just that the tools that are available to us have changed quite a bit. Mark, I know you probably want to add your point of view on that as well.
Yeah. So when we do take that point of view that everything is a fulfillment order, when we look at our warehouse and we see books, clearly we have to interact and engage with every order that comes through for our publishers. And we do that in a couple of ways. We integrate really tightly with our customers such that we can streamline data flow back and forth between us and the publisher. And because we're in the middle of every order, that puts us in position to deal with and help our publishers fulfill all of their products, whether that be a print fulfillment, whether it be a POD fulfillment, whether it be an electronic distribution, whether it be a license key, whether it be apparel. However that transaction happens, we want to be and are in the middle of it, because our publishers are really faced with a lot of challenges. And one of the things we can do to make it easier is to get those products that they've worked really hard to sell into the hands of their consumers as quickly and as elegantly as we can. And when we further take that integration and we automate what we do and remove steps, remove cost from the process, we can help our publishers further by being as price competitive as we can be for those services that we do choose to provide. So it really is thinking of like every order is a fulfillment order, but also making sure that our publishers are healthy and profitable, because when they're healthy and profitable, so are we. And it's just a good thing for us and them.
And in order to keep them, even more profitable, well, the way I understand it, Mark, is that you're able to share the benefit of transactional data and other things about customers
Yeah.
with the publishers to help them maybe improve marketing and distribution in the future.
Yeah, if I could point to one of the most important things that we do is help our customers manage the richness of the data that we have, that we're stewards of, right? We don't just push data back. We really try to work through insights into the data that our publishers may not otherwise see. And so we're able to do things with data, whether that's a calculation, a computation, whether it's some forecasting, whether it's some analysis against a benchmark, for example, and really help our publishers understand to be able to draw conclusions from their data and make better decisions about their business. We often joke internally, it's, our job is to help our publishers ship more and store less, right? And from a warehousing company, that sounds odd, right? But we tell our publishers, for example, one of the things we tell our publishers is both when they're about to run out of stock of something, but also when they have too much stock of something. And we also share with them, here's how much it costs you every month to store this product. You have, more than 3 years of inventory, for example, on this product. We're charging you this amount for that. And I don't want that money. I don't want to charge you that money. I want to work with you to help manage down that inventory. That could be through creative programs like rebinding and creating a higher value product. It might be through a bundle product set that they can bundle the product with overstock with something that is selling so that we can draw down that inventory. In addition to the obvious, let's pulp a remainder of the stock, but that's the last choice, right? We want to get value. We want to get economic value from the inventory that they do have.
When we share that point of view with our publishers, it's interesting to see their reaction. At first, they're not sure what they're hearing. When we explain to them how this ends up being a win-win, it becomes so much more clear for them too. Because for us, the real estate aspect of owning a warehouse and fulfillment business is quite large, and so managing that is a challenge. And to the extent that our business is, since we've taken it over, has more than doubled in size and volume, and yet our footprint has hardly changed during that time. And that's really the result of helping our publishers manage that inventory down, and get rid of the obsolete stuff that doesn't move, and that opens up capacity for us to bring in new customers and growth of our existing customers, and as I said, it ends up being a win-win.
I find it so interesting, this idea that you can help, and Mark mentioned it a moment ago, help a publisher whittle down slow-moving inventory. When I think about it, I think that, or I wonder, how do you sort of predict the future or forecast the future in terms of demand? For example, if you had a slow mover throughout the year, it might all of a sudden be popular at the holidays as a gift. So, I'm just curious about the method to figure out, is that a slow mover that's going to pick up for the holidays? Is it something that's a dead mover, and we should figure out a creative way to get rid of the inventory?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
we all
part
have
of the
crystal balls.
No, that's the beauty of the way that we dive into the data, make it visible, and that we analyze it, and applying some artificial intelligence support as well. We can get into predictive models and have a little bit of visibility to the future. As funny as it may seem, that these are tools actually that we are deploying. I don't know how much you want to share about that, Mark, but that's kind of the exciting stuff that we're working on these days.
Yeah, and it's a tough topic because historically publishers overproduce, right? We get entranced by the economies of scale, unit cost, right? And if we look across our warehouse, the biggest challenge we see is overproduction. And the best way to combat overproduction is, Chris, as you said, get the crystal ball out. How much am I going to sell? Right? And we employ 3 approaches to try to figure that out. The first one is we know that there are natural historical demand curves for product. It's based upon a number of factors, but we've developed a series of kind of out of the box, if you will, standard demand curves. We try to fit those to a product. The second approach we use are some a little deeper mathematical models that do account for seasonality. It accounts for history of the title. And it's a more mathematical, traditional forecasting approach using a couple of pretty cool tools. And then the final one we use, as Mike said, is we are developing out some machine learning models that will take into account for additional factors other than just time series data. And those are proving to be interesting at this point. I don't know if we've kind of really cracked it, but we can get substantially better than just somebody kind of looking at, hey, how many did I do last year? I think I'll do this many this year, right? Mm-hmm. So we do have seasonality accounted for. We do have some interesting approaches, and these are tools that we are actively working to develop and deploy, not only for our internal use, but use with our customers to help make better decisions on reprints, replenishments, make decisions on when we're going to pull up title from an inventory position to a POD position. And then, Chris, as you noted, when has a title exhausted its economic life and needs to be put out of print?
And this is when we can get our publishers to start thinking about total cost management versus just looking at unit cost of an initial print run on a title. Now we're making progress, right? So, and that's the old way of thinking, right? Is let's print as many as we can to get the unit cost down and make the economics work in terms of margin on a title, and then all of a sudden, 3 years later, you've got a few thousand books left over, and if you go back and recalculate the cost of what you printed, your unit cost is much higher than what you thought it was going to be because you didn't have the sell through. Mm-hmm. And if we can start looking at managing those runs a little bit better, manage them down to a reasonable, and of course the technology on the print side helps with that. But also look at the inventory cost. When does it make sense to move on from things that aren't moving? That whole total cost management approach, managing your cash flow, that's only going to make our publishers more healthy. And again, as Mark alluded to before, when that happens, then that's better for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really taking a strategic approach using modern technology to what is, in some respects, a legacy business, right? Or a relatively simple business. No, but I like the approach because it makes publishers think more like a manufacturer than just a publishing house, in a sense, right? What I'm curious about too is, I mean, the elephant in the room whenever you talk about book sales is always Amazon, of course. But what I sense is that PSSC is really serving sort of underserved parts of the market, that Amazon really doesn't do all that well, frankly. But you're really it's not like you're ignoring Amazon. You're looking for opportunities, but also embracing how the market has changed. I mean, Mark, when we talked before the call, you were talking about this notion of shifting sands in the market. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, how the market has changed with the Amazon factor and how PSSC is really flourishing in special niches of the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting matter that's evolved. I mean, it depends upon what type of publisher you are, of course. But for most of the publishers we serve, Amazon is a significant, if not their largest, channel of sales. And so as a supplier, we ship a lot of product to Amazon for our publishers. And we had to make a decision many years ago. Are we going to embrace what Amazon is doing as the market leader, or are we going to fight it, right? And we made the right decision by embracing it. Love it or hate it, they are setting the market standard from a consumer perspective. Quick and easy ordering, quick and trackable shipping on products, great delivery. And so we embraced it not only from getting product to Amazon, but getting product through our facility to our publishers as customers, because they've worked really hard to get that direct consumer order. And so in many ways, it's been good for us to understand how that dynamic works and how we can embrace and follow that lead. But from a sands in the market, it's interesting. We're seeing a terrific amount of change and turnover with our distributors other than Amazon, in the library market in particular. And it represents a real challenge for our publishers. How do books get from our warehouse to the library? How is the library going to purchase those products? How are these books going to get to, certainly for small to mid-size publishers, distributed to bookstores and other locations? And so it is a concern for us to observe and watch how those traditional channels or established companies are being removed from the market, and how our publishers are going to get their books out to the consumers.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating because you really have two. I don't want to call them divisions. I don't mean them that way, but you have two elements of your business where you've got the B2B side and then the B2C side,
Mm-hmm.
and those data sets about sales trends and forecasts and demand are completely different, and they don't really mesh all that well. But you're really running them simultaneously and successfully.
Yeah, it's a great point, Chris. Sales to Amazon or other distributors tend to be large and spiky, right? They'll take an inventory position, so you'll see a large spike, and that's not necessarily an indicator that that's going to occur again in the future. And then you have, if you whenever you're doing forecasting, as we talked about earlier, you're going to want to stratify. Is it a distributor? Is it a library market? Is it a retail market?
Mm-hmm.
Each of those three layers, they behave differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
They
Their
have
requirements
different,
are different. Yep.
yeah,
Labeling and such. Yeah.
yeah. And so from a forecasting and trying to figure out what's going to happen, you do have to look at them differently, and then you take the whole from the sum of the parts.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about authors that are, maybe not as famous as the Michael Crichtons of the world, just to pick one out of the air, where maybe they don't have a track record of demand or a huge following, and all of a sudden, either they're going to do really well or not so well with whatever their next release is, and you've got to be there to support it. I just think that the ability to forecast has got to be really tough, but you've got years of experience and years of sales data to try and extrapolate what's going to happen with a given release.
Yeah, and
I was just going to
go
say,
ahead, Mike.
it can be a little bit fickle too. I mean, you have a huge disruption in the world with a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Books did exceedingly well during that time period. Who could have predicted that? And then also when you have a bestseller out there, it'll give buoyancy to the rest of the market too. And again, that's it's hard to have any kind of visibility on that when you're looking ahead.
The bookstores and the libraries, though, or let's put the libraries aside for a minute. I got to believe that bookstores are really concentrating on not being out of a particular title at a given time if they can avoid it, because the knee-jerk reaction is, well, if I can't get it in the bookstore, I'm just going to go online and buy it from Amazon and get it tomorrow instead. So how do you manage that dynamic and keep those bookstore customers handy too? Or I'm sorry, happy? How do you keep the bookstore customers, or the customers of your customers, I should say, happy, to make sure that they're fulfilled, but not over fulfilled?
So it's an interesting question because there is a unique dynamic in the book publishing market where we draw a line between distribution, which is the marketing and selling of books, and fulfillment, which is the shipping and storing of books, or storing and then shipping, right?
Right.
And we've made a conscious decision to stay on the fulfillment and warehousing side of the business. Whereas there are other companies that are very good and very well suited for that marketing and selling. So
Right.
I don't know if I'm qualified enough to answer the question about bookstore availability and shelf space and how that decision is made. That's a little beyond my scope of knowledge.
Yeah, you're just there to make sure that when the order comes in, it goes out on time, and
Bingo.
you fulfill your piece of the chain, so to speak. I know. Are you also seeing more opportunities for not only your business but the other businesses in the chain, so to speak, with some of the economic changes that we've seen in the last year? And I hate to focus on tariffs too much, but the tariff situation, I think, drove a little bit of that behavior from a manufacturing standpoint. But there are certainly other factors like interest rates, like inflation, et cetera. How has that impacted the volumes that you see for your customers?
Yeah, so a couple ways. One interesting thing is that we're seeing a lot more interest from overseas publishers to work with us. So that we've always had a small amount of overseas publishers that we worked with, but it has really spiked recently because of their concerns around the tariffs and such. And so a lot of our new business and growth is coming from there. So that's kind of interesting. Also, just over the past year or so, we've seen with our legacy customers, the consumer buying behavior has changed a bit. It's slowed down a little bit, so their order activity is down pretty consistently. And it's starting recently to pick up again. So we're seeing year-over-year closing of that gap, which is nice to see. But in that really, Chris, it's not so much the tariffs as it has been the uncertainty as to what's going to happen with the tariffs, if that makes sense. It's just this uncertainty changes from week to week that causing people to retrench, I think, and to hold back a little bit. Hopefully that's going to smooth out. And I think, as we talked about before, put all that tariff talk behind us and can move on to better things. But
yeah, you would say
so
that's
been a factor. Yeah.
Well, outside the academic market, buying a book and reading a book could be considered a leisure purchase, right? So if you've got if you've got a limited budget, you're going to have to, wait till things settle down before you feel comfortable to spend the extra money, I suppose. So I get it.
But we are starting to see some thaw in some of our publishers getting a little more aggressive with their front list this year, or in 26, I should say. They're being a little more aggressive with new titles coming to market, and that's a positive side overall.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And you'll see a bump as a result, right? Just in addition to the holiday bump that you're probably starting to see now a little bit. Maybe you're well into it at this point in November.
Yeah, I would say, Chris, too, another thing that is kind of interesting that has evolved is we see a lot of other people within the supply chain. A lot of them are printers reaching out to us and wanting to partner and work together on opportunities to help leverage what they're doing, what they're selling, and to provide the same benefit in return. It's kind of interesting to see that. I mean, I think people are trying to be a little bit more nimble, a little bit more creative in terms of how you have business relationships, how you get customer relationships, and how you make progress in the market. And I think it's been actually kind of fun along the lines of getting creative in terms of how we can work together, how we can solve problems for our customers with an expanded tool set of solution sets, and it's really interesting to see how that's changed. There's a lot more cooperation and collaboration going on. Would you
Yeah, I
agree,
see.
Mark? Are you saying it the same way?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's interesting having worked on the production side of book manufacturing and on the warehouse and fulfillment side. It's interesting to think about it today, in that a lot of things that we were doing as manufacturers, we were bad at. Like they weren't profitable for us. They made a certain amount of sense when you looked at them in one particular light, but ultimately, when you try to do too much outside of your core, um, yes, you're providing the service, but you're not providing best of breed service. And we kind of recognize that ourselves. And there are things that we choose. I said earlier, we choose not to do certain things. It's not because we can't, or we don't think we could do an okay job. It's just we're not going to be great at it. And so it's better to partner. And I think, as Mike had noted, we're starting to see some changes there, with manufacturing partners. We're saying, hey, we'll do this part, you do that part. I think we could together can do it far better for the customer.
And for a publisher who's, they're making cuts and trying to manage their business and reduce costs, having fewer points of contact is only a plus for them.
Yeah, for sure. And they can, to your point about delegating and cooperating with each other, and sort of capitalizing on it. I've seen that in the printing space in different verticals for a while now. Especially when you go to some of the trade the trade meetings, the printers seem to be looking and really, I don't know, really striving for trying to find these unique little combinations, and competitors become teammates sometimes in that process. I just find it fascinating that they'll some companies are competing on one side of the business and cooperating with their competitors on the other, but it seems to work. It's an interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah, it sure is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Chris, what's really interesting too is that there's this other aspect of our business that is worth mentioning along those lines, is that we have a sister company, BindTech, with 5 locations around the country, who's one of the leading, if not the leading, book finishing company in the industry, and they provide not only a full range of binding functions from mechanical to hardcover, but they're also the largest capacity of edge printing as well in the market, and so that's interesting, and we have a lot of crossover with them, whether it's common customers, cross-selling, and as our sister company, we certainly position ourselves that way, and we've incorporated our technology, our fulfillment technology platform, into the BindTech business so that we can do things such as ship off the binding line, right? So if for example, a publisher has a first run coming out that they have pre-sold, so they have a slew of back orders, we can finish that book at one of the BindTech facilities, and then immediately ship from there and fill all those back orders. So we get some efficiencies, we get speed to market, try to hit those standards, as Mark alluded to before, that Amazon has set in the market.
And really being a multi-level solution for your clients, right? Because you're taking
Yeah, for
you're
sure.
taking multiple things off their plate and making their lives a little simpler, right?
Absolutely.
And importantly, we're squeezing unnecessary cost out of the flow, right? We're removing some transportation costs. We're removing things, and so we're going to lower that overall cost and increase the speed to market, speed to that consumer.
Yeah, you've removed at least one, if not two steps out of the transportation process, to your point. And I think a lot of people outside the industry probably don't fully appreciate how important that is, to
Absolutely.
just be able to do it in one spot and then transit from there.
Mm-hmm.
So quite impressive for sure. It's nice to have that, in the family, so to speak, right?
And Chris, we're back to that idea of total cost management. You start looking at it on that level, as you said before, a more sophisticated level, and it's just overall a better way to manage cash flow.
Right, exactly. Well, guys, this has been a really interesting chat about and sort of look under the hood in the distribution end of book publishing and printing. I know you, Mike, are calling in about both of you from Ypsilanti, Michigan, and you have another facility in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. So we've got the country pretty well covered. But where can people find out more information about PSSC and get in touch with you two?
Yeah, well, pssc.com, our website, is a great place to start. You'll see us pictured and listed on there, and there's ways to reach us through there. It's probably the best way.
Fantastic.
We've got our marketing team has done a great job giving us a stronger social media presence these days as well. So that's another way to find us as well.
I hope the fact that you were on the Think Factory podcast will be a little bit of splash for you on social media too, Brent.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll do it best
we appreciate that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Now, you guys have been great, and I love having both of you really with your different perspectives on the same business and working together and really sharing some of what PSSC does for your customers. So thanks to Mark Witkowski, Mike Seagram, both from PSSC, that is Publisher Storage and Shipping. Thanks for a great chat. And this has been Chris Santamassimo from the Think Factory podcast, and we'll see you next time.